everybody that's cooking along today, or that's just in attendance. I'd like to say a big welcome to Seán. And I would say just from, I could say like author of a cookbook, kind of representative of the Student Housing Co-op, like food-related performance artist. I also have a copy here, just for continuity. Look, we could almost do a thing of like, let me pass it to you and then you've got it. And then, oh God,
there's two. Oh no, the illusion is broken. Oh God.
My point is, I feel like you have a lot of things related to food to talk about, so I'm not even going to limit you to one specific thing. But point being, we're here today to cook some black bean burgers and some seasonal slaw, and I'm very excited, and I think it's going to be very tasty. So first of all, I would just like to ask how you're doing today, Seán.
I'm doing really well.
I would like to address the fact. Also, I feel like I'm just going to speak up just as I place my onion peel here. Which means I'm going to address the fact that we are currently coming at you from two screens each. Yeah. Because for anybody here, I would just like to fully credit this idea to Seán because it's brilliant and it's exciting, and we can see veg up close. And I feel like it's an exciting segue for you to talk about one of your things that you do, and the reason why you are such a visionary in terms of two screens.
Okay, so I didn't invent Zoom.
That guy is a billionaire now, and we're not a fan of billionaires. Or I'm not.
No, we're not.
So, good.
So I have this fancy tripod. It's actually not mine, it's my friend Joe's that he's just lent to me. But I'm using it to film because I'm a performance art student in the Conservatoire, the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland here in Glasgow. I study contemporary performance practice, and that involves, at the moment, our own work and a lot of creating digital performance and performance online. And so what that involves is cameras and Zoom and video recording and yeah, lots of those things. I can talk a little bit about how this relates to my work with food, because we have a lot of different projects kind of ongoing a lot of the time. And last year I had the chance to sort of choose my own project, my own way of working. And I decided to create a performance around food. And that performance was actually really fun. I have it here. It involves, I'm also a baker and I bake bread semi-regularly. So this performance was using sourdough, and I have my starter here. My studies and my performance work really interlace with my sort of passion for food, because I'm always trying to find ways to incorporate food and food production and sustainability and environmental concerns in with my work around performance, because performance being a live medium means that when I'm physically in a theater or in a performance space, which sadly can't happen at the moment, I was really interested in the fact that over, say, a cooking show or a film about food or documentary, you don't get to experience, you get to see the food, you might be able to hear cooking or people talk about food, but live performance has the advantage that you can experience food in different ways, such as taste and smell and texture, that isn't possible remotely. So I began researching into food in performance and wanted to create work with sourdough because of its process of fermentation, which I think is really fascinating and relates to a kind of slowing down of modern or like contemporary life, because it's a process that takes, for me, 2 days of prepping and then fermenting. But sorry, I'm going on a real tangent here.
It's absolutely fine. We're in the process of all of this. We're going to make an entire meal, so we have plenty of time. So feel free to chat about whatever you like.
Speaking of food, I have been prepping the, as you can see, red cabbage. That probably won't come into play later, but I think probably the first thing is to roast the sweet potato, which will probably take a little bit bit of time, and it's probably it's the first step of the recipe. So there you go. You get a view of my lovely fresh sweet potato.
It's very nice. Also, I can do the same. I have not currently prepped mine because it's to my mind, but
Shame on you, Thalia.
that's also the thing, is that I was really interested in what you were saying, but at the same time I was looking very aggressive as I tried to chop this sweet potato. But yeah, so first step that we're working towards prepping the sweet potato, and we have the privilege here of, I feel like you know exactly what you're doing because this is your recipe, which is very exciting. Okay, so firstly, kind of from what you were saying about your performance art and sourdough, I'm just interested because I feel like I also have a big interest in food in lots of ways, but I guess it's like a lot of people do, and not everybody decides to try and make it their professional life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I very much am of the mind that food and something to do with food is what I would like to do. But I'm interested to know what it is that made you want to make your performance art about food, or at least some of your performance art, or that one project. I guess you've said already a little bit, the fascination of sourdough and getting to see the process more. But yeah, just I'm interested, what was the kind of genesis of that? Because I mean, you could have almost done anything, I suppose. And what made you settle on sourdough?
Actually, it's interesting because I've just been doing a presentation on a totally different thing. But what I always come back to is I'm really interested in, I think, why I'm interested in performance and theatre and art is connecting with people. God, that sounds so cliche when I say that loud. No, what I'm really interested in is having like a connection with someone, whether that connection is through something that I'm telling you about, or it's a connection with an audience member in which I'm presenting to a bunch of people, whether it's a one-to-one like chat with a friend. I'm really interested in connecting with people and the ways that we do it, the ways that we find like connecting and understanding each other. And the biggest, like one of the biggest ways in my personal life is through food, is through sharing food, is for going for food, is talking about food. Literally the most exciting conversation I have with my housemate every day is just like what we're going to eat for dinner, because there's not really much else to do. So it's just like, I find that connecting with people through food is a really interesting way to connect, because everybody eats, everybody has an experience of food, and oftentimes people's connection to food could be through loads of different ways. Like some people really love to cook, some people don't cook at all, some people love eating certain foods, other people hate them. And so I find working with food in performance is a way to really establish a connection very early on. And I suppose that's what led me to working with sourdough. And then I think there's loads of other things around that, such as, it's just funny that my family are here because I grew up around cooking, and they're in my kitchen at the moment, and it's like grew up in that kitchen, always being around food, always cooking, eating. And I think, yeah, as I said before, theatre has a really interesting, and particularly performance art actually, has a really interesting history and relationship with food, because you have that sort of immediacy of the live moment where you're able to smell, able to taste, able to have a sensory experience of food that isn't always available in other mediums. And then I think, yeah, people's history with food is really interesting. And then also, I just love eating. I just love, eating food. And I think like that's not the only thing I make work about or work with, but I think it's a really exciting thing, and I'd love to do more of it. I think there's a really interesting position, because when I was making that performance last term, I had to move it online, and similar to what we're doing now, it's like it had to be performed remotely. And then there's this weird disconnect where suddenly something that was such an intimate, like personal experience became this sort of cooking show, this sort of surreal, like removed experience. But then I think there's loads about the there's something really interesting about the intimacy we see of someone else's home and someone else's kitchen, the view we have of them in their own space. You can't actually see my head right now because I'm like kind of cut off.
I don't want you to have to crouch though. That seems uncomfortable for you personally, for your back.
No, it's fine, it's fine. I'm just kind of leaning on the counter. I'll just keep doing things while I'm talking because I keep
the way to do it anyway. And also I feel like with these, I always look really rude because I'm not looking at you. I'm just like looking at my potato. So if we're both not paying actual attention to each other, it makes me feel a little bit better because I absolutely can't multitask in that way. At least not, my eyes definitely can't multitask. It's physically impossible.
You only have two, and usually they're looking at the same thing, so, you know.
No, it seems like a waste, right? Like, surely if you're going to have two eyes, like, should be kind of owl, like, looking all different. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Yeah, that's interesting to know kind of how, I guess, that, would you say that changed the meaning of your project? That kind of it was then done virtually and it kind of, I don't want to say it removed because I don't want to kind of take away from the meaning of your project, but it seems like it maybe changed it slightly in terms of you then don't have the physical stuff.
Oh, yeah. I think, sorry, you're not looking at what I'm doing anymore. There we go. I've chopped up the sweet potato. I've just put a little bit of oil on it. I'm gonna put a little salt and paprika on it. Yeah, I think it changes everything, and I think it isn't always changing it isn't always a bad thing. I mean, you know, let's not pretend it's not like great that we can't gather and we can't, you know, be in the same space and all these other things. But like, I think there's also something really interesting about the reach of digital performance. Like, for example, my family are here, they're across, they're in another country, and yet we're able to cook at the same time, which is really exciting. And there's something like really interesting about that. But for other projects, I've had to, at the moment I'm working on a digital performance, and it's just like really draining because we're on our computers all the time, which is very normal for some people's way of working, but for performance students, for drama students, it's really challenging because we're trying to, you know, really discover these really trying to work out new skills about working online when everything happens in person in a rehearsal room. But in terms of that performance, working online, I would say it's frustrating, but there's also moments of, oh, there's a lot of potential in this medium. It's just, you know, a different way of working.
Okay, shifting back to, like, not to talk about Zoom. Being on it is perhaps enough, but that was my fault. So kind of talking about, you linked the topic beautifully in talking about the communality of eating and how it's something that a lot of people can engage with. And since we are currently in the process of making two things from your collaborative cookbook, which I'm going to hold up again.
Oh yeah, I'll get mine.
Not that you have to, I just wanted to try. Like,
wait, I'll for everyone at home, I'll show, like, this is the black bean recipe, which is my name. Look at that, I wrote this. But also there's loads, there's loads going on here. There's also, yeah, here's the photo. This is me and my old flatmates. We don't live together anymore, but we wrote this cookbook together. Yeah.
I feel like this little segment has all the makings of an advert, and so I feel that I should ask if we can buy it anywhere. Like, I have this because you're good friends with my flatmates, and Sophia, my flatmate, bought a copy, which is how I came to be linked up with you. But can anybody watching get one if they want to get their hands on it? How can they do that?
Why, yes, thank you for asking. I do actually have a link because we published it through this website, Blurb, which is like a self-publishing website, and it's still live, so anyone could place an order. But yeah, that was a really nice project, actually. It happened because last year I lived in this house where I only lived there for a year, but it was in the middle of Glasgow on Bath Street, and there were 8 of us living in that flat. In a 7-bed flat, there were 8 of us, and we were really close. We would go out on nights together. We all studied different things, but I met them through my classmate who lived there the year before, and then when her room came up, she was like, "Sean, why don't you come live with us?" And then I moved in, and then we were quite close, and then lockdown happened, and we were a lot closer, too close maybe. Things got intense, but what was lovely is that we always cooked for each other. So communal meals were really important. There was only one kitchen, and it was big, but it wasn't that big. And when I moved in, it was already established that rather than 7 or 8 people trying to cook their own dinners, we would just kind of share that. And then I think some of them had lived there for 4 years, and so I think over time a system developed where we'd communally buy ingredients, and we would, plan meals, and the like cooking was often not a chore, but actually people would like queue up, be like, "Oh, I really want to make this pasta Alfredo thing," or someone else would be like, "Oh, I'm really interested in want to make like a Thai curry." And so it would be like, when it got to lockdown, there really wasn't anything else to do. It would be like a queue of a week of planned meals, and we'd shop around it. Before lockdown, we weren't really that on top of it, but yeah, so it was really nice. And it was like really nice, especially when lockdown happened, that there were so many of us living in this one flat, because when we couldn't even go outside to meet people, it was when it first happened, it was like, you have to stay at home all the time. It still felt like there was something of a social life. And so it came about, the cookbook came about because we all cooked communally and shared food, and we really wanted to keep each other's recipes. We were like, we really wanted to it came out, I think, because Kaya was like, I really want Jez's sweet corn soup recipe. Jez, you need to write down that recipe for me. And she was like, "Yeah, no worries." And then it kind of snowballed from there to we started collecting recipes, we started taking photos, started to be like, Rich and Jez were definitely spearheading it, because they had finished, Rich especially had finished uni quite early. He had finished in like April, and we were still living there until we moved out in July. So with nothing else to do, I think he put all his like uni admin skills of writing a dissertation into writing a cookbook. He did a lot of the formatting, and so did Jez.
These are the transferable skills that they say we're going to get. Okay.
Yeah. Like suddenly, formatting essays became formatting cookbooks, and yeah, we also had a pile of cookbooks. I have like a small amount left. These are just mine and Kaya's. We still live together, but
Sorry, I'm curious. I'm actually like,
oh, here, I'll just turn it.
Also, I'm just nosy. I'm like, okay.
Here, this is just like a fraction of what we used to have collectively. That was fun for me.
I also like my small pile of cookbooks is here, right where my fingers are.
Yeah, Rich was really into cooking, especially.
I can see also like the guide to fermentation, because I know that's something you're interested in, because the first time we met out in the garden, so
yeah.
you had your kombucha. That was the first kombucha I'd ever tried. I haven't had it since. So I am not one to judge kombucha, but it's the best kombucha I've ever had. And there it is. How's it looking?
I've kind of left it for a while because I'm the only one who drinks it in my current flat, where there's 3 of us, and I actually kind of need to stop making so much of this because it's not being really consumed. So it's kind of it's hibernating. Sorry, I've kind of lost what I'm doing.
All right, and I feel like, so you've got your sweet potato in the oven, as do I at this point. Now what I'm doing is currently chopping an onion, ready to kind of fry it in a bit.
I've got the onion and garlic. I'm just going to start frying that over medium heat to kind of get it, get it translucent, get it fragrant. All those words you see in recipes.
Before you do that, I have a proposition, which is, so you know how in the slaw we add toasted sesame seed? What do you think about toasting the sesame seeds in the pan and then, does that work? Or do you add them at the end? Do you add them at the very end to the slaw? So this is like really high in advance?
This is, I would say, really high in advance, but I like the idea. I've also just realized I don't think I have sesame seeds. Oh, I've got sunflower seeds. I could use them instead. This is what a lot of my cooking is like. Thinking, oh, I don't have that thing. I'll just use something else similar.
That's the best way to do it, I think. Not that that's how I do it, because I'm terrified and I follow all recipes to the letter. But I respect your way a lot more. Anyway, this is also like another thing revealing about how I cook, I would say, that I'm like, okay, so we don't need the sesame seeds probably for another 2 hours, but let's toast them now just because we've got the pan. But also that might be slightly neurotic. Is neurotic the word? I don't know. I feel like I'm just overusing it. Anyway, I'm going to do the sesame seeds now.
You toast the sesame seeds. Anyone who has sesame seeds, I think, can toast them if they like. I'm going to go and fry the onion.
I'm delegating all authority to you, since you are the author and the brain behind the recipes we're making, which is a privilege to have you here. Okay. Now I feel like, okay, so we've covered a little bit of ground. We've set a base. We know you made this cookbook, you wrote it with your flatmates, you were very into communal cooking. Also, I like what you said about, I like how communal cooking can both be like practical in terms of there were 8 of you, in a kitchen. And you kind of, it wouldn't be practical for you to all kind of be trying to cook at the same prime times. So it like starts off perhaps as like a practical thing, but actually obviously turns into a lot more. And now you have a lovely cookbook.
It was really nice. I think it really led to us being really close friends because we were really keen to, you know, it's this really nice moment where if I hadn't talked to or seen anybody, I knew I was going to see everyone around the table and we could see each other and like share that time and that space with each other. Because I think what's really easy is to feel like you're living in a house with other people, but like never really kind of, you're sharing facilities, but you're maybe not sharing your lives. But for us, we were very like close with each other. We would like, you know, I would say for myself as a cook, I can sometimes be like pretty blasé about like making, I want to make nice food, but I don't always have that motivation when it's just me. But when you're cooking for other people, it becomes much more exciting because I want to share. I want other people to have nice food, and then I get excited about it myself. And I think living in that flat was really great because like a lot of my flatmates were real foodies. I mean, I hate saying foodies, but like we're really into their food and really into cooking. So then we try and like over time the standard started to go higher and higher, just because it was like, you know, when it was lockdown, it was like there's nothing else to do. So sometimes I'm gonna spend 6 hours in the kitchen making an elaborate 4-course like Chinese takeaway inspired like feast. But you know, if it was just me, or maybe just me and my other housemate Kaya, we don't really do that much anymore because we've got much more uni work this year, but also we've got like, we just have a much smaller kitchen and it's just the 2 of us, and we generally like are pretty we like spending time with each other, but we're not like, oh my god, I need to like recreate this meal that I saw. So it's just interesting how it changes over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So talking about kind of sharing facilities and the people you're living with, I feel like it's the perfect segue to move on to talk about the Glasgow Student Housing Co-op. There's nothing I love more than a perfect segue. I don't know, do you want to chat a little bit about how you got involved with the co-op? Here I have a co-op member sneaking up behind me. Hello, Nelly. This is like great promo for the Glasgow Student Housing Co-op because I'm like, you're on Zoom, Nelly's here behind me, also looking out for my sesame seeds. But that also bears some explaining, right? Because I live with 2 members of the Glasgow Student Housing Co-op. But in theory, you should all live together. Basic point being, what drew you to the Student Housing Co-op? What's going on with the Student Housing Co-op? What's the vibe of a co-op, I guess? All these questions are important. Over to you.
I'll start off where I kind of got involved. I'm in my 3rd year of a 4-year degree in Glasgow, and I moved here without any really knowledge of the city. Sorry, I'm talking over frying onions, so I don't know if that is impacting my sound.
A great union of sounds, I feel. Like, that's you're saying interesting things, like, it's all fine.
So I moved here without really any knowledge of the city or any people, other than like knowing I was going to join a course and have classmates. So when I moved here, I really liked Glasgow, but at first I just didn't really know anyone. So I was pretty keen to like kind of get to know people. And I think it was like halfway through my 1st year, I heard about the Student Housing Co-op. And previously it had no presence in the RCS, in the conservatoire. It had been purely Glasgow uni students. And I was like, oh, I want to go along. And that was 2 years ago. And now I'm like, I think the longest standing member slash, not including Charlotte, who is still a member, but is not a student. But yeah, it's a housing cooperative. But we're not currently housed. So currently we're working towards establishing an alternative to private student accommodation and rental flats by trying to take control of like our own housing. So it would mean that it's democratically controlled by the members, by the tenants, and it would be owned by the co-op. So owned by the members. So there wouldn't be anyone to answer to when if there's no landlord trying to raise the rent, or there's no one to, I guess, like call if the boiler breaks, or like we are in control of our own housing and we can put up our own posters, we can establish our own community garden, we can do all those things, or at least that's the aspiration. Yeah, and so we're working towards that. We're honestly, it's kind of been like this for a while, so it's sometimes hard to judge, but like we're pretty close to getting a house, is what it feels like.
As an outside observer, like I know you've been places, you've visited, you've like had viewings, and maybe the stars haven't aligned just yet, but it does seem like it's within reach. As someone that knows almost nothing about it.
It's kind of crazy when you think about a bunch of students buying a house, but that's what it is. Like when we go to viewings, it's maybe me, Melly, and Sophia, and maybe some other members. But like we've just come out of like a lecture, and then we go up to this property, and there's like someone trying to sell a house, and we're like, "Hi, we're here. We've got money." Oh, maybe we don't really, but we've kind of established. It's quite complicated, and a lot of our members, maybe ourselves, don't really know fully. But like, not that they don't know, but basically, it's quite complicated. We've got this funding through a larger cooperative called Student Cooperative Homes, which we help set up and are members of, which is like a co-op for co-ops across the UK to set up student housing co-ops. And what we're trying to do is, I guess, set up student housing co-ops across across the whole UK, and we think Glasgow is a good opportunity for this because of the high amount of universities and the relatively low property prices. Now it's not really that low, but I guess compared to Brighton or London or even Edinburgh, it's more affordable. So it's part of the experience of living in a student housing co-op, which I have not, but I can talk a little bit about what we hope it might be, is not only just like people renting a house or a flat together, but also part of that communal living, which I've talked about in this old flat, which where I lived, which was this kind of experience of sharing facilities, but also sharing space and sharing food and sharing similar values and working towards, I guess it's kind of, a co-op is quite a specific thing, and it's quite a, we're hoping that it can be like a really beneficial experience for our members, as well as, God, I feel like I'm in like a sales pitch or something.
I'm sorry if I've created that environment. I may have.
No, not at all. It's just quite funny.
Like, I mean, it maybe has the tendency to go that way, right? Where I'm like, tell me about the student housing co-op.
No, I'm more than capable of talking about it. It's just funny. I've got like trying to not let my garlic burn.
Well, the multitasking aspect of things does sometimes play into the conversation, I feel like. Often I feel like when I'm doing a cook-along, I can't quite ask maybe the questions I'd ask in a normal conversation because I'm too busy trying to cook. But, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, it's quite nice. I think the experience I had in my old house, in my old flat, felt like a primer for living in a housing cooperative, because we essentially, aside from the fact that we were paying rent to a landlord, everything else was really communal and really cooperative. We shared the bills, we shared the cooking costs, the shopping costs, we shared our food with each other, and that was a really great experience because it really established good friendships as well. Yeah, so I guess that would be the hope, that with a student housing cooperative, it'll help shift the culture away from student halls, which can be quite isolating, or private renting, which can really have loads of problems for the housing markets and the experience of living within communities. And you know, there's a really interesting shift within Glasgow. I can only speak to Glasgow, but there's a really interesting experience, which I think is that like there's certain parts of the city that are really student heavy and can really influence the permanent residents there, which I think a lot of that shift gets blamed on students, which is ridiculous because there's such limited options for housing, and you can hardly blame students for like collecting in a certain area, usually around their unis. But I think that ignoring it doesn't help either, in that alienating other communities within these areas, like that is also happening. It's just maybe a more like systemic and complicated problem than blaming students for wanting to live near their universities. I don't know, it's a big thing, but I'm just kind of
also, kind of what you're saying reminds me, I do feel like there's currently maybe I think like a student housing co-op kind of, it like addresses, I think, what a lot the maybe the problems, the grievances that I think a lot of people have with their landlords, like with the current situation. It doesn't feel particularly just or particularly sustainable or really like best use of anyone's money or time. I guess for landlords it's working pretty well, but okay. I've just become slightly conscious of the sustainability aspect of all of this, and that I haven't kind of spoken about that much. So in order,
yeah, do you think?
Firstly, in terms of like housing that is kind of like controlled by landlords and whatever it is, like I feel like one example of it not being as sustainable as it could be is like something as simple and as obvious as like double glazing. You know what I mean? Like if you're a landlord, it's not really in your interest.
How do we live like so far north with the shittest weather and so many houses and flats do not have double glazing windows? It's like so, it boggles the mind the amount of places that we saw that were freezing. The flat was freezing. I mean, they have these gorgeous sash windows that were.
Yeah, the windows are beautiful.
But they don't do anything.
Oh. And it's so sad. Like my boiler sits right next to my window, and so it is the most obvious thing when you can see the boiler kind of churning away and see it happening. It's gurgling, rumbling, but you just know that all of that heat that it's generating is just seeping like through the bad window and into the little courtyard of all the flats that are in the exact same position. Because landlords just don't really care if it's a cold flat, and they don't really care if it's well insulated. But as a kind of minor example of a greater problem, reminded me to talk a little bit about the sustainability of communal living, communal eating, communal cooking, like all of it. So, I mean, there's lots more little examples. Like, for example, the oven is on currently, and it's better that I'm going to use the oven once and cook for like my flatmates rather than all of us use it separately, just on the kind of base individual level in terms of sustainability and energy use. But I know kind of you review perhaps to the sustainability of kind of well-being and community sustainability and general kind of well-being and happiness, and all of that that's cultivated by communal living, ideally. Which I guess something like sustainability, it's interesting. It's one of these concepts where how we draw the lines of it can really influence how we prioritize it. So I feel like right now, so I'm a politics student, and there's such a, like there's a climate crisis. All governments are kind of, at least on the surface of it, supposed to be kind of turning to a more sustainable outlook. But that's sustainability defined one very specific way. Whereas for me, talking about food sustainability, that's about kind of fair food for all, good food for all, the right to food, all of that. And plus, like, I think it's really interesting to consider this kind of idea of communality, and that kind of nourishing communities and creating sustainable, happy communities. Basically, this is a very long-winded way of asking you if you have any thoughts on that, or if you'd like to share some thoughts.
I would just quickly update that I'm grating a carrot because just cooking update. I've kind of sweated my onions and garlic. They're mostly browned, but I've tried to turn off the heat so they're not going to burn. My quinoa is cooked and my sweet potato is in the oven. It needs a bit more time, but in the meantime, I thought I'd get on with the slaw and prepping the slaw. So I've got a I'm grating the carrot. Yeah, I completely agree. I also think it's really interesting because my course is performance art, but it's really political. And I was just thinking about this performance I saw by a drag queen, which is about her defining this commucracy, this like, I don't know if it's real, this political movement towards communal democracy. It was really interesting. But I was just thinking about how like performance is our way of like imagining the world, or creating a world for people to imagine a new, like maybe it's fantasy, but maybe it's a way of imagining a new political system. And I think food is a way of like enacting and living certain ideals, as well as like loads of other things. But I think it's really interesting how people really really focus in on people's food and people's eating habits, and like really expect people's cooking to embody their political ideas. I'm really just thinking about veganism and plant-based diets and sustainability and the way that we hold people to really high standards. I don't know. Yeah.
Also, I think it's a very interesting question, even even among people, like personally, so I'm not vegan, but my job is to kind of promote sustainable eating. Like I'm not a prime example, or maybe the point is I am a prime example of, you know, someone that, you know, is aware of the issues and is trying, but still lives a certain way. I don't know. I think there is certainly a shift in, like, even people I know that are vegan and would always be vegan, I think there's like maybe a sort of awareness that that's not something that's on everyone's radar or isn't accessible for everybody. Kind of earlier in the year, we did some work, I guess, with Glasgow Centre for Population Health and a bunch of other organisations that were to do with kind of creating a kind of good food plan for Glasgow, which is currently they're kind of drafting the final version. But it's really so we were coming at it from a sustainability perspective, which is a big part of it. But for a lot of people in Glasgow, like, not eating meat is completely, like, so far beyond priorities and what is important and what is manageable and what they're used to, kind of thing. So I do think in order to have properly sustainable food systems, there needs to be more of an awareness. It's like all these things. I think moderation is key, and especially with food. Like, I think, as you say, food is tied up with so many different things. It's so personal. It's something influenced by a great many things, and I think to hold people to those high standards, kind of just is unsustainable. But just with that different use of the word.
I'm really something about veganism. My cookbook, the cookbook I made with my housemates, is all plant-based, is all vegan, and my diet now is about 90 or 95% plant-based. But I don't consider myself vegan because I do sometimes eat non-vegan things, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. That it's like a mix of, I'm trying to eat more plant-based food or blah, blah, blah. And then there's also a really interesting thing. I was listening to this podcast about food sustainability. It was called Farmerama.
Okay, I've not heard of that. Cool.
It's really good. I really love it. Farmerama, I just found it on Spotify. But basically, it was when I was doing research for my dissertation, which for a while was on food in food performance. And yeah, it was really great because basically they talk about food from a totally different perspective to what I'm used to. It's a podcast about food sustainability, but often they're interviewing farmers and growers and food producers, as well as people who manage what do you call it, food chains, which I think is super interesting. Not as in like the animal based, like how food goes from a farm to someone's home. So they're talking
like kinds of production kind of thing.
Yes, it was super interesting, and I think there was something really interesting about engaging in food sustainability, not through what you're eating, but about how you're connecting to the people in your food chain. So it was about what relationship you might have with your local greengrocer or a supermarket, or what kind of relationship they might have with a grower or a seller or all these other things. And it was really adding a human element, which I think is really fascinating, to something that can seem so like systemic and beyond one person's ability to impact. I don't know, I just found it so fascinating.
Okay, very interesting. I want to ask how your cooking's going. So I'm thinking I'm gonna add the marinade to the slaw.
Oh, sweet, yes.
Then it can get kind of marinating in the fridge, right? Is that a shout? I don't know. How are you doing? Are you still grating your carrot?
My carrot is done grating, and I've now got my carrot and my cabbage ready. I'm still waiting on my sweet potatoes. sure everybody else is probably also waiting on sweet potatoes to cook.
Me too, me too.
Marinade is good. You know, this is quite funny. I actually made this slaw, which is from Cornucopia, the green cookbook, which is a vegan cookbook. This cookbook is actually from a restaurant I used to work in Dublin, which is a vegetarian and vegan restaurant. It's maybe like the quintessential vegetarian restaurant of Dublin. And actually my sisters who are there in one of the Zoom boxes, and my mom, who's waving, we've all worked in that restaurant. And so this is where that recipe comes from. And
okay, I'm going to start with are you at a stage to put the things in the slaw? Just, I feel like this is where the benefit of the Cookalong comes, because I'm unsure and I would like your guidance as the resident expert.
Yeah.
So first thing to add to it, do you add the sesame seeds to it now or later? Oh, okay. It says
later. I would add later because you want it to be whole.
Okay.
Yeah, I would make the dressings with the liquid ingredients first, and then add peanuts if you have them, or sesame seeds after. It probably shows in this cookbook, but when we wrote this cookbook and wrote these recipes, we were living in a really kitted out kitchen because 8 people brought kitchen equipment. So we had like anything you could want in a kitchen. We had it, and it was a really big kitchen, and there was often people wanting to help out. So there'd be like, you know, prep was really easy. And now it's like when I cook from this cookbook, I'm like, I don't have a fucking food processor anymore. Or like, I do now, but it's tiny. It's not as good as the stuff.
I also have this tiny one, and it is not belonging to my flat. It is belonging to my flatmate's boyfriend, and we stole it a few weeks ago, and no, probably like 2 months ago or something like that. And he wants it back, but we just won't give it to him because we use it. But you know, I'm hoping we can get away with it for a bit longer. I don't even think it's his. I think it's his flatmate's. But yeah, I feel kind of bad about it, but also we might even be using it twice in this recipe. So like,
we will be. So don't get rid of it yet.
I can't imagine he's going to burst in the middle of this and demand it back. And if so, like, I will fight him for it because I'm not willing to mash the beans completely.
My favorite bit about this coleslaw, this slaw, is the peanuts. I actually really like them in the dressing because I just really love peanuts and honey and soy sauce. I think it's a really good dressing. Yeah, so my quinoa is just getting cold. It's just cooling now, which is good because you want it to be cooked, but like it doesn't need to be hot when you make the patties. I'm
literally coming at this from a selfish perspective in that I'm like, I don't know what is 45 mils? Is that a tablespoon? Is it half a tablespoon?
Oh, I mean, I just dash or do a taste. Oh no, sorry, wait, maybe that's not the right thing to say.
No, I'll do it. I'll brave it. But anyone that knows me and my cooking, I don't take risks. I just don't. Exactly. I'll brave it because I feel like I must. So I will do it.
What would be?
I'm still afraid. You know, I'm still like, I have a 60 mil thing, which I think I'm just going to use like half of. See, I really can't. I need to let loose, I think.
So just a heads up, my sweet potato looks like it's done. Yeah, it's soft. This is your reminder to check your sweet potato. It might be burning.
Formal reminder to everyone with sweet potatoes. Yeah, I think it could be done. Also, I'm just a bit of a sheep. Like, since yours is done, I'm like, mine's probably done. That would make sense.
I've discovered recently, maybe not recently, but I'm like, since I started doing it, I'm doing it more and more, is that I'm just like constantly tasting when I'm cooking. So I'm constantly just like eating bits of it, which I feel like has actually really helped my cooking along, which is something that is like so obvious, but I never thought about doing it. Or I wouldn't want to cook things I don't want to taste things or put them in my mouth if they're not cooked. But now I'm not afraid at all. I'm just like, meh, meh, meh.
You say that seems obvious, because I would say that is my greatest cooking sin, and I'm constantly made fun of for it. But I literally will not taste anything until it's on the table. And it's amazing that I still make food that doesn't taste horrible, because like I make other people taste it. Like if I'm cooking something and it's high stakes, I literally will make one of my flatmates taste it. I need to blend my marinade now. So Sean, I would like to offer this opportunity to you to monologue for around, I don't know how many seconds this will take to blend, but just long enough that this is blended and I can mute myself so no one hears me blending. So over to you for a topic of your choice.
I feel like this is a dangerous thing, giving me a platform to just talk without any boundaries, because I will just continue to talk forever. But anyways, I was going to talk about how since living in this, no bun.
I'm just interrupting to say you have an unbounded period to talk, but only for as long as it takes me to blend. So speak quickly.
No, what I was going to say is something I learned actually a lot from my old housemates, which was about I'm lactose intolerant, and I learned loads about vegan cooking and vegan like techniques that I would never have known about building flavor that doesn't involve meat, or about recreating like cheese or cream or all those different like flavor profiles that you don't get in from like regular like what am I trying to say? You don't like, I wouldn't have known before. So what's like really cool about this cookbook, and why I go back to it a lot, is that we've got recipes for like vegan, to make your own vegan cheese. And we've got like a recipe for making pizza, and we've got like, I actually have a vegan cheesecake recipe in that book, and I just think it's super interesting. Like I just really get excited about recreating food without some of the recipes, some of the ingredients that we associate with it. I really love stew, and my dad makes really good stew. So does my mom. So does pretty much anyone in my family. And to make it without meat, it's like what kind of flavors do you put in there to recreate kind of the heartiness, and also maybe some of the things that are missing. But it's like, yeah, it's just really within my habit to like throw some nutritional yeast, or I love Marmite as well, or tamari, or miso, and all these other things that really recreate those. Not recreate, they're different, but they really enhance those flavors that you don't get. I don't know how this relates to anyone else, but I feel like my relationship to food is really related to my family. Like my mom used to teach cooking she did in night school, and all my family, we have like always eaten with each other and sometimes cooked with each other. And then the last time I was home, or the last few times I've been home, my sister has been pregnant and then has had a young child, where it's been like I come home and then it's just like cooking all the time, which I really love. I really love sharing that. And I'm always really like keen to connect with people through food, over food and through food, which is a shame, because I feel like that's really lacking. What I'm really missing is having people over to my flat and cooking for them.
Yeah, so you've kind of touched on, I think, why I was so excited to do this Cookalong about communal eating, because I think it's something that's kind of been coming up in the last few Cookalongs, in that this is a small way in which we can kind of cook communally. And obviously we don't really get to eat together, but we almost do. Like, we're so close to it, just with the small barrier of being in all our own homes and eating. Quite the same, but it's similar. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think like the kind of, for a lot of people, I think their first experience of communal eating, even though we wouldn't usually phrase it that way when it's in a family structure, but it is like, for a lot of people, that's where you kind of first experience eating in a group, is in a group. And I think that's why it's almost, I think there is a real way to form kind of like family through food. And I think that's really important right now with our flatmates. or whoever it is that you can cook with. Because we're all maybe a little bit kind of out on an island, not allowed to go outside kind of thing. I need to wash my food processor now. I'm just going to give it a rinse, I think. I wonder, Melly, would you like to sub in and chat to Seán for a moment? Melly, now I would just like to facilitate a brief interlude. I want to ask just if you two would like to have a moment chatting about your experience of the Glasgow Student Housing Co-op and how things are going. And Melly, what would you like to get out of communal housing? But also, Seán, you know this joke is coming because I've already made it last time we spoke, that I secretly don't want you guys to get a house because I don't want my flatmates to move out. That's your secret agenda. That's my secret agenda, unfortunately. Anyway, right, I'm going to watch this. Melly, over to you.
Cool. I mean, I've already met some cool people, even if I don't get a house, which is what we always say. But no, it's been really useful learning some new stuff, learning how to be more cooperative, I guess, and democratically led. Guys giving me a thumbs up. Yeah, what about you, Seán?
I just got a shout out to Melly being probably the most passionate person in the co-op about policies, which is just incredible because
how could anyone be passionate about policies?
No, but like we have like 100 different policies about loads of random stuff, which is gas because there's like maybe like 3 of us at the moment. There's maybe 3 people. We have policies about what happens when the boiler breaks in the fictional house that we do not own yet. And Nelly is just so on top of it, which I just really appreciate as someone who is not on top of it. Shout out to Nelly.
I mean, we are grateful for one of them. Like the last thing I did was like the equality and diversity policy. And now that we have to apply for a grant and we need one of those, that's useful.
The co-op's great. That's all my thoughts.
What?
The co-op is great.
Co-op is great. We are great.
What more needs to be said? When I'm posting this video, I'll include a link to their Facebook. Join up.
Talk to us about co-op stuff, or if you want to get involved. We're always looking for new members. If any of you know maths, that would be really useful because I don't need to do our taxes. But yeah, back to
So, quick cooking update. I'm going to start making the burgers.
Me too. So
got everything ready. Basically, at this point, I'm blending the black beans, sweet potato, quinoa, and the garlic and onion. You basically want to have all those. Thalia, I'm gonna put you on the spot, and I'm gonna mute for a minute because I'm gonna blend. So you go lead the show.
While I have this moment to speak on the floor, I'm not going to say anything interesting about communal eating and sustainability. I'm just going to open my can. I know what I'm going to talk about because I was going to talk about this anyway. Okay, so I have 2 cans of black beans from 2 different places. So these black beans are from Locavore, which is on the south side of Glasgow, but there's also one in Partick now. I just spilled bean juice all over myself. So sad. So Locavore apparently is a social enterprise working to build more sustainable food networks which are better for society and the environment. And this was packed in Italy for Locavore, which always surprises me because I don't know if I'm stupid, but I was always like, it's Locavore branded, so it was grown in Glasgow, like perfect. But that just isn't the case, and is not true. But it is a social enterprise and it's good. This was like 80p, this one, from Roots and Fruits, or you can get it at Locavore. So if you're wanting to splash out on your black beans, there's an option. Okay, and then even more splashing out, these were £1.15, Suma organic black beans. I think I'm going to keep this can just because the expense of this is something incredible to me. Not that it's not worth it, I'm sure. Like, organic is better for the environment in so many ways, and also Suma is a cooperative. Mainly, organic is good because of the soil health, I think, is the main thing. Melly says Thai, and I say yes, Melly. Melly says if you want to keep your cans, you can plant things in them, which I think is what I'm going to do, at least with this one. Or in some edgier Glasgow flats, I have seen cans being used as ashtrays. So if you want to show that you care about the environment and that you eat organic black beans, but you also smoke tobacco, a very harmful substance. I say that as someone that does occasionally smoke, so it's less judgmental coming from me. Just to reveal my positionality in this. So that's my little chat about black beans. SUMA cooperative since 1977, since we're talking about cooperatives. Good. Ordering people built on integrity and equality for more than 40 years. Who knows, maybe soon the Glasgow Student Housing Co-op will have a tagline just like that. Nelly, queen of what was it? Policy. Queen of policy. Maybe she'll be creating a tag like that soon. Anyway, I need to drain my beans now so that I can start blending them. I also think I've used all my big bowls to make coleslaw, so I think once I've blended things, or not coleslaw, just the slaw. Okay, this was a debate we were having earlier, Sean. I'm wondering if you can weigh in on this. Is coleslaw exclusively with mayonnaise? Or
I'm going to weigh in and say, I think it is.
That's what I thought, because someone was like coleslaw, and I was like, it's just slaw, and they were like, slaw is just the Americanized like slang for coleslaw, and I was like, I think the cole alludes to the mayonnaise.
I put my weight behind your theory. I think that's how I've always thought about slaw, coleslaw.
Cool.
Would be interested to know why mayonnaise translates to cole.
I don't know, personally I don't like mayonnaise, so don't have much expertise in that area.
I'm just going to mash everything by hand because this is ridiculous. This thing is tiny. So if you too want to be freed from the constraint of a food processor, join me by mashing with a fork.
I think that also is what lies ahead of me. What were you thinking about while you were mashing? Was there any aggression behind your mash? You know what I mean? This has no purpose. Maybe, do you know what you should say your aggression behind your mash was? It was unequal, unjust housing and the climate crisis. That's what I'm going to think about.
Also, most of these recipes came from cookbooks. We changed them as much as we would change them in cooking, but a lot of them were just really good recipes, so we kind of took them. I think it's also interesting to know, proceeds from our cookbook went towards Black Minds Matter, a UK charity to assist financially with Black people on POC therapy. That's where the proceeds from our recipe book. I think we raised £200 in the end, maybe, and it's ongoing. So maybe we'll get more. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really good and sticks, I feel like, with the ethos of the whole thing. So that's good to know. Okie dokie, I am going to blend my beans now. So speak to you in a moment. How I decide to do it is blend the beans and then I'm going to mash everything once the beans are blended, like together. Or at least I'm going to see how that goes. Quick note, mash your beans before you add the other ingredients, because I'm coming up against the fact that I'm mashing everything, but the beans kind of are holding within that. So mash your beans before you incorporate and mash other things. In terms of leftovers, like Lauren's saying she has a bunch, I wonder, so I heard on a podcast recently about this kind of thing of like chefs in France when they make things with, so basically obviously food waste is a huge thing. One of the ways in which food sustainability takes a hit is in kind of food waste and food just going to waste and not being eaten. So it's interesting to think about the ways we can repurpose our leftovers. And I personally am not hugely creative, which maybe is coming through in the rest of the conversation in terms of my non-experimentation, etc. But there are lots of different ways in which you can repurpose leftovers. Like, for example, this maybe doesn't necessarily have to go on life as a burger. So I'm just thinking, can we together think of, like, if you don't have flatmates that you can force to eat your food, as I'm about to as soon as this is done, and equally, like, if we've made too much quinoa, what can we do with spare quinoa? Like, if anyone has any ideas, Sean, if you have any ideas, other things that can be made, I'd just be interested to hear them. Well, anyone else can jump in, but I was sort of thinking about quinoa. It's really good in salads. It'll keep if you put in the fridge in an airtight container. I bet the mix, actually, I bet it would really make, you could roll into kind of sausages and bake them that way and have them for a like breakfast or lunch thing.
I wonder, okay, what else could you do? Does anyone else have any thoughts? Anyone that isn't Sean? I also am trying to think. I'm like, I've asked the question, I'm trying to answer it, but I literally have no idea because I lack the creativity. But maybe it's a thing that can be learned. I don't know.
I was just gonna ask a quick question. Sorry, this isn't your question, Thalia, but any tips on like molding the burgers? Because I think my mix is a little bit wet. So if any tips would be greatly appreciated.
So I'm going to suggest using flour, and now I'm thinking, is that safe? But you're baking it or frying it, so it will cook.
Also, just to add, like, definitely some flour, but I usually just make sure my hands are like very wet, like just get some water, because that helps with the molding a lot.
Also, chilling it if time isn't a problem. If that is where you're feeling, it'll definitely firm up in the cold. Also, if it's really too wet and you've got extra quinoa, you could try and incorporate more of that, because it's quite like it's literally like will be the kind of fiber and hold it together more. That's just what's on my mind. Anyone else?
I just wanted to quickly say I panicked when mine was too wet and I added oats. I don't know if that's like a thing or not.
Ooh, yes.
But I just panicked and added them in and it worked. I mean, so far I haven't actually tasted them, but like they were okay to mold.
Cool, thank you guys.
The beauty of a cook-along, look at that, a problem solved. Problem shared is a problem, in this case, like quartered.
Love to hear from my sisters, my mom. Unmute, I want to hear what you've been making.
Well, we've been making your stuff as well. But at the same time, we made a 3-layer chocolate cake.
I mean, there's 3 of you and there's 1 of me, so.
Sorry, you're in the different country.
This just reminds me, I was doing, I haven't seen you guys in a while, but I was doing the yoga class this morning, and then I thought I could plug you guys. My sisters are yoga teachers, and they have.
Yeah. You see that we live the healthy lifestyle, can't you?
I mean, it's all about balance, right? And maybe it doesn't have to be. So do a bit of yoga, have some chocolate.
Yeah, we do live yoga 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, on Instagram at 8:30 a.m. So if anyone is interested, we'd love to give you guys like a free trial. It's Lunasa Yoga is our put it into the chat. Lunasa Yoga is the name, and then we have a private membership. It's called Lunasa Yoga Clan, which means family in Irish. So yeah, I'll add it in, and if anyone wants to check it out, and then we'll do a student prize for anyone who wants to stay on. So I think something like €1 a month or something if anyone wants to stay on. But Sean, how do you like it? Do you enjoy it?
I love it. It's also something to get up for, because if I don't,
yeah, it gives a bit of structure, doesn't it, to the week?
Yeah, it really does.
Okay guys, enjoy your dinners.
Okay, how's it going? I'm currently on to the shaping.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm putting my burgers into the oven now. How long?
I actually put mine in the oven, and then I realized I should show everybody what they look like. So now I'm struggling to get them back out.
And you must.
They look really rough. This maybe isn't my best work. So the black beans didn't want to really incorporate. So they're just kind of whole, just chilling out there. But you know what? That's fine.
Okay, so what we still have to do in our own time, further moments are to toast buns, chop lettuce, chop tomatoes, all of that good stuff. So we have some delicious burger assembly points. Plus, I would just like to announce that I'm going to be using the jalapenos from last cook-along, which we had, that have been in my fridge, and they are going to be in addition to the burger. Since we're all we've put our buns in the oven, not our buns in the oven. Oh, clearly I just had a Freudian slip there. Okay, so thank you so much, Sean, for joining me and cooking along. Thank you for sharing lots of wonderful information with all of us about the housing co-op and for some wonderful insights on communal.
Absolutely. Thanks for giving me a platform to make a fool of myself. No, I'm kidding. Thanks for having me, and it's been really lovely
and I hope everyone's food turns out well.
I'm optimistic that it will. I'm sure that it will. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.